welcome back to the Procurement and Finance Coffee Break. I'm Claire Green, your finance transformation expert.
And as ever, Richard, on this occasion, I am going to be the procurement guru.
Okay.
Apparently.
Okay. So today I'm going to interview you on a topic called, you've titled it The Power and Pitfalls of Supplier Incentive Programs, which sounds very dramatic.
Well, it is. It's procurement. Sounds to be exciting.
Well, to start us off then, Richard, on this dramatic topic,
yes.
Can you explain why supplier incentive programs are and why they're gaining traction? Are they gaining traction?
They are gaining traction. And in fact, I chaired ProcureCon EU in Barcelona in September, and they published the 2024 European CPO report. I'm going to check my maths here. 87% of CPOs are using supplier incentive programs to foster collaboration, drive innovation, and meet ESG goals. So it's a growing thing. And the reason it's a growing thing, because fundamentally what we're talking about here is how do you move beyond a simple customer-supplier relationship and incentivize behaviors that are beneficial to both the supplier and to you as a, I suppose, risk-reward program. We want to drive the right behaviours, and that's what these programs do. So, yeah.
So, well, volume rebates have been around forever, haven't they? But what are the common types of programs, and what are you seeing that a growth in?
Okay, so absolutely, a volume rebate is probably one of the longest standing and most simple to understand incentive program, which is, look, if I buy more from you, can you give me a bigger discount? Simple. But it's, to my mind, that's an incentive program which is just sharing the benefit of scale, because you're hoping if you can commit to bigger volumes, you're going to allow better buying power, reduce input costs, and therefore have a think. Great. But actually, what we're talking about in incentive programs, particularly these days, where we're focused on ESG, we're focused on compliance, we're focused on, as we talked about, with Nike a few coffee breaks ago, about driving innovation. That's not a volume rebate exercise. So for me, the ones that are more exciting are where we're doing, performance-based rewards, where, we focus on the performance that we want to see, which could be an innovation or a time to market or efficiencies of production. And by incentivizing the supplier to do that, you're encouraging the behavior and not forcing the supplier to bear the cost by telling them to do it. I think the other one, which I think is, really growing and is, I can only see it becoming, an even larger proportion of incentive programs in the future, are ESG incentive programs where, everybody's got the problem. I mean, scope 3, we've talked about, everyone's got to reduce their CO2, but it doesn't matter how far downstream you are in a supply chain. It actually just means your scope 3 CO2 problem just gets bigger because you're looking all the way over your supply chain. So I think, where suppliers can see that they're going to benefit from going the extra mile to improve their ESG performance, and they get that recognition from their customer through some kind of incentivization, I think can only be a good thing for, the kind of positive change that we want.
Okay. So each of these approaches can be adapted to fit, I guess, a unique buyer-supplier relationship.
Yep.
What's in it for the companies? What's the big benefits of implementing these programs? Obviously, it's to get behavior that they would like to see.
I think it's more than that. But of course, it's about behaviour you'd like to see. But I think ultimately, it's about moving from a transactional purchasing activity. I am the customer. I buy whatever product or service from you, to actually having a deeper relationship, which is not purchasing, it's procurement, where in procurement we're looking to deliver value across multiple dimensions, whether that's innovation, cost, sustainability. And we're using procurement as a joint process to foster innovation off the back of relationships where both parties feel they're going to benefit from it. And I think if you focus on it as a deeper relationship first, and from a good relationship come good things, then the good things we're looking for. So of course you're going to get efficiency and cost reduction, even because, that relationship, you are prepared to be open about, as a supplier, about your cost drivers, or as a customer about your forecast, so that both sides can make sensible decisions about what's coming. I think that, that's a really simple one.
Yeah.
I think, I come back to it. The most important thing that comes out of, the deeper relationships today is no one company can solve its ESG problem alone. You can't. And that's partly because your problem is dependent upon everybody else's problem. Your CO2 is yours, but it's also that which comes from your suppliers. So, when we're looking at, whether we're looking at human rights, whether we're looking at sustainability, or we're just looking at pure cost inefficiency, the benefits come from a relationship where you're having an open conversation. Both parties are taking risk and both parties are sharing reward. And that to me is the biggest thing that comes from it.
And do you have an example of a company that's done this and worked well? I think it'd be interesting to hear.
Yeah, I think of big well-known brands, and one that's been in the press for doing it. I think Unilever's program is a good example. Unilever, like many companies, it's getting a bit of hard press because of food chain and sustainability. But actually, what they've done is they said, okay, we have got to make sure that the supply chains that allow us to deliver products to consumers are both efficient, but they're also sustainable. And therefore, what they did was to put in place a program which did two things. It rewarded green practice. So where suppliers were actively demonstrating they were doing innovative things to reduce environmental impact, they were rewarded. And secondly, those that began to demonstrate began to get access to Unilever's research and development. So now you're talking about co-innovation, where even a small supplier that was engaged on the program was able to go and benefit from the huge R&D resources that company would never have access to, to be able to go and do it. And somewhere here, I'm just going to look it up because actually I think it's a really important number. They launched it to 56,000 suppliers. Wow. I mean, that's not a small deal. That's a big program that says, right, we want to work better to do it. So yeah, I would say Unilever's is a really good example of a large global brand doing something at scale with suppliers to reward the performance they wanted in a really tangible way.
I think I would say like a company like Unilever is such a mega corporation, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, also, I would have thought they would need to think outside the box and come up with some innovation to tackle their supply chain issues, especially around ESG and sustainability. Because as you say, they're selling to the customer, but behind their purchasers is a mammoth supply chain.
Well, it is. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, I can't name the company, but in the Netherlands, there is one company that named on the national environmental plan because their contribution to CO2 is so significant that if the company doesn't change, the country can't achieve its targets.
Wow.
And, Unilever, okay, if we're talking globally, you're right. Huge company, huge supply chains, big impact on the planet. So when a big company implements a program with suppliers to make a difference, actually that truly does begin to make a difference.
So the title of this coffee break, you've called it the pitfalls as well.
I did.
What was it? The power and the pitfalls.
Yep.
So we've talked about the power.
Yep.
What are the pitfalls?
I think it all comes down to one thing: different objectives. So if you as a company are incentivizing to do innovation, and your supplier thinks you're innovating you're going to incentivize them to reduce cost, you're not doing the same thing. And we've mentioned this idea of a North Star so many times. I think the pitfall of a supplier incentive program is that you're not aligned on the same North Star. What is it that we're trying to achieve? And unfortunately, it's very easy for that to happen, particularly when you've got a change of people. We've talked about it. You'll have a big goal from the board, you'll have a big program, but the way it gets implemented is not actually in line. I think the other thing, a pitfall, is, and I suspect there's many suppliers out there who will shake their heads ruefully, is that it all sounds good on paper, but it's when actually it turns out the rewards are somewhat less than the risks. So if you don't deliver, the penalties that come your way are rather larger in scale than the rewards. And I think, therefore, as well as having that North Star, it's got to be open and fair.
Yeah.
If there's a reward, that reward has got to be shared.
That's certainly been not that I'm a specialist in it, but certainly my understanding of some of the compliance issues, especially in Europe, where the penalties for not complying can be
awful.
Because let's say you're a 100 million turnover company, it might be so much, but if you're a 500 million turnover, it might not be a linear penalty.
No,
it might be like scale. So I guess when you're trying to put performance matrix and KPIs in place to make sure that you are meeting compliance standards, for example.
Even if you go back 10, 15, 20 years to when you were doing, contractual penalties for late delivery, when you actually looked at the contracts, there were no penalties on the customer for being late on the specification, changing the volume. So the poor old supplier would work hand over fist to make sure they hit it, and then they'd bear the brunt of the penalty. And I think, I'm sure some of those still exist, but I hope we're quite a long way past that now. Not least because AI can do a very good job of telling you whether a contract is fair to both parties. But I think the same thing applies on an incentive program, which is from its very outset. It's not a prenup like a contract is so often. An incentive program is about, making sure that both parties have the opportunity to deliver a shared goal and share the benefit of delivering that goal.
And is that your final takeaway for companies thinking about setting up a supplier incentive
Only
program?
with one extra thing. Agree on the North Star first. So agree the North Star, make sure everyone says, yes, that is the same thing. We all agree that's what we're trying to achieve. Even something, and I would say always keep it simple to start with as well. So, just as a classic example, just take scope 3. If you sat down with your entire supply chain and said, collectively, we have to reduce our CO2. Do we all agree we're going to have to reduce our CO2? All your hands go up. Great. There's your North Star. Reduce your CO2. So now you can build an incentive program that says, right, just as you talked about when we were doing, financial transformation, understand your current state. What's the baseline? What is everyone's CO2 impact today? And then agree a framework that's going to reward people fairly for contributing to a reduction. And, I think if you put those two things together, clear North Star that everyone's aligned on, and then a really simple, open, fair incentive program that encourages everyone to move towards that North Star, you set yourself up for success and build a better relationship, because once you've actually done it and people can see it wasn't words and it does actually, then you're going to be more open to getting them to sign up to another one. And that's where the relationship benefits come. So they would be my two.
Okay, great, Richard. Well, that's it for this episode of the Procurement and Finance Coffee Break. We'll be back next time. I'm not sure what we're discussing next time. I think it's Agile versus Waterfall.
I'll be interviewing. I probably won't be commenting that much. I might.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.